The greatest glory in living lies not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. Nelson Mandela.
Acceptance doesn't mean resignation. It means understanding that something is what it is and that there's got to be a way through it. Michael J. Fox.
At the South Street Day program, where people spent 6 hours a day engaging in group discussion and tabletop games, conflicts occasionally flared. One afternoon, a loud disagreement took place between Peter and Jane over the only newspaper available.
Peter's frustration was easy to hear in his sharp voice. "Move, Jane! Let me read the paper."
Jane's response was just as intense, showing her determination was as strong as Peter's. "No way, Peter! I want to read it too."
Their argument quickly turned physical. Jane reached for the newspaper, but Peter held onto it tightly, making it seem like a fist fight could break out at any moment. Jane stumbled back, and Peter's clenched fist and red face showed he was losing control.
Lily, who was experienced in handling these situations, stepped in calmly but firmly. "Hey, Jane and Peter. Please let's take a moment."
Peter's anger eased a bit as he loosened his grip. "I had the newspaper first."
Jane's breath was uneven, showing her frustration. "He can't always get what he wants."
Lily's voice was comforting as she focused on Jane. "I hear you, Jane. It can be really tough when you want something and it feels like it's pulled away from you." Lily then turned to Peter, acknowledging his feelings. "And Peter, I understand how important it is. Sometimes, things can get under our skin, especially when we have our hearts set on something." She spoke to both with warmth and concern.
These validations worked like a soothing touch for both Jane and Peter, helping them feel heard and understood. As each started thinking more clearly, it opened the door for more communication.
I remember the day my best friend lost his job. He called me, voice shaking, and told me the news. I could hear anger and sadness in his voice. "I can't believe this," he said. "I've been working there for years, and they just let me go like that." So I just listened and affirmed his feelings. "I see this has really been hard. This is a tough situation," I said. "It's understandable to feel angry and upset about losing your job." We talked about the facts of the situation. He told me about the meeting with his boss and the reasons they gave for his dismissal. I said it doesn't seem fair that it was a difficult process to go through. As we talked, I could see my friend starting to calm down. He began to think about other options and ways to move forward. He started to make plans for job searching and updating his resume. I can't believe I just did that. I was at the meeting, and I ended up crying in front of everyone. I was so embarrassed, I ran out of the room and locked myself in the bathroom.
I can understand why you would feel embarrassed. Crying in front of others can be a stressful situation, especially in a professional setting. Can you tell me more about how you were feeling in that moment?
I was so overwhelmed, I couldn't control my emotions. I felt like everyone was judging me and thinking I was weak.
It sounds like you were really hard on yourself in that moment. We all have different ways of coping with stress and emotions. It's a part of being human. You didn't mean to cry, and it's understandable that you would feel overwhelmed. Running out of the room and locking yourself in the bathroom is understandable. Surely you would want some privacy and time to process your feelings after something like that happens.
I guess you're right. I'm still feeling a little embarrassed, but it's nice to know that my behavior is valid too. Thanks for putting it into perspective, I really appreciate it.
The curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change. Carl Rogers.
Validation is the recognition and acceptance of another person's thoughts, feelings, sensations, and behaviors as understandable given their current context and experiences. Marsha M. Linehan.
Validation means one participant communicates to another that their responses make sense, are understandable within their life circumstances. The validator actively accepts another individual and communicates it. A person who is validating another takes the other's responses seriously and does not discount or trivialize them. This requires the validator to search for, recognize and reflect to another validity inherent in their response to events. In this practice, we observe, experience, and affirm, but do not create validity. That which is valid pre-exists. It's part of a bigger picture view we are in the process of grasping.
Imagine someone saying, "It makes perfect sense that you would ignore your partner's feelings and act selfishly." They can be quite demanding at times. "I can understand why you would drink so much last night. You had a tough day and needed to unwind. I can see why you would cheat on your partner. They weren't meeting your needs and you needed to seek fulfillment elsewhere." Yes, all are examples of validation. But of course, we all know better than to reinforce without qualification personally detrimental remarks. Ultimately, this would spark feelings of rejection, alienation, or mistrust if a person's broader interests are so neglected. Clearly, to be effective, one doesn't simply validate the invalid. Instead, we find simple ways to validate the nugget of truth. I can see how difficult it must have been to deal with your partner's demands and how you may have felt the need to act in a way that was self-protective. It's understandable that you may have felt the need to cope with a tough day through drinking. It's normal to feel unfulfilled in a relationship. These nuggets help us to voice understanding, open doors.
I've learned that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did. But people will never forget how you made them feel. Maya Angelou.